I'm Evan Gudmstead, an instructor of application and web development at Rankin Technical College. Today, I'm doing this live stream as I continue to traverse the official Microsoft ASP.NET Core documentation to see what useful tidbits that I can bring into my class. And so, so far this spring, I've gone through a lot of these different tutorials, and I will continue. Today, going to work through creating your first Razor Pages web app. Now, I will say that Razor Pages are kind of built into the views in MVC design pattern, and so I'm very familiar with Razor Pages. I've definitely worked with them before in this MVC design pattern. However, I just want to go through these docs and see what else I can learn, right? Definitely don't know it all, never claim to be a know-it-all. So I'm going to go through this tutorial and see what I can learn, and like I said, make it useful to my students. And so feel free to follow along if you want to learn some more about Razor Pages in .NET Core. Okay, this is the first tutorial that teaches ASP.NET Core Razor Pages. For a more advanced introduction, if you are already familiar with controllers and views, see Introduction to Razor Pages. Well, as I just said, I am familiar with controllers and views. Maybe I need to go ahead and do that. For a video introduction, go here. If you're new to development and unsure which core web solution, at the end of this tutorial you'll have a Razor Pages web app that manages a database of movies. Let me kind of glance at this one. Okay, I'm going to do both. I'm going to start off with the beginner one and then go into this one because it definitely has more meat to it. But we'll start with this first one and then move on accordingly. This one looks really interesting. Some things I am less familiar with. Okay. I'm going to be working in Visual Studio 2022, so you got to install the right templates on the installer. Already did that. Open up Visual Studio, new project. New project. And I'm looking for web app with Razor Pages. ASP.NET Core web app, Razor Pages. So I got C# and web filters up top. Project template for creating core application with Razor Page content. Drag this to my other screen. Where on my computer? We're on chapter 11 or 12 now, so for now I'll say chapter 11 folder. Project, Razor Pages movie. Matching this capitalization for the namespace. Now this is .NET 9 friendly, so .NET 9. Do not use top level statements as unchecked. Let's click create. So as with the MVC world, Razor pages have a CSHTML extension versus Blazor apps, where Blazor apps have a .razor file extension. So as I kind of expand this, we get the CSHTML. Razor, man, I'll never get over how similar Razor versus Blazor versus, and there's Razor pages, which is different than .razor file extension. .razor file extension, just to throw the confusion in there, .razor, if I go here, let me show, I'm just kind of glancing at this myself, but if I go into my folder with chapter 10, and I kind of go into components, see we get a, okay, so .razor, and these are the components that are created. So this is an app component, and this is the counter component. So .razor file extension creates a component inside of Blazor. Okay, these are Razor pages, which have a .cshtml, which shares that in common. These Razor pages are also in MVC. Okay, so let's just see this template out of the box. And it's not too common that I look at the chat, but I got a fella here, Mike. How you doing, Mike? You gonna rap soon? LOL, I know, Blazor Razor. So after this Razor project, could I create a Blazor version of it? You know, I probably already have a Blazor version of it. In fact, again, this is movies. Here's a Blazor bike store. As I kind of rewind through these chapters, somewhere in here I had a movies. Here's a Blazor pizzas. Here's a sports bar. I'm not sure if I had a Blazor movies. Maybe at one point. All these Blazors. I'm sure there's movies in here. Point is, I probably already did. Yeah. How you doing, Mike? Where are you from? I don't interact with my live streams too much. But since I got you on here, where are you from, Mike? Hello from St. Louis, Missouri. Okay, so glancing here, just a very standard home and privacy. Long Beach today. Stuck in web forms, learning Blazor. Yeah, that's what I'm doing too. I'm learning Blazor and bringing it into my class. And yeah, good old days of web forms. Definitely have taught those back in the day. Where do you work? How's California? Probably nicer than St. Louis. Temperatures, it's about 50 degrees here today. Moving on, run the app. Trust the SSL certificate. It runs on the Kestrel web server. All right, let's look at the... Yeah, Mike, if you're looking to learn Blazor, this particular tutorial is not Blazor. This particular tutorial is Razor pages. But I did go through all these Blazor tutorials as well on my live streams, and I made a few videos. .2012 Tech. Yep. Me too, man. Well, thanks for the chat. I'm gonna continue on. Nice to chat with you. Okay, so Razor Pages has a .cshtml with HTML markup with C# using Razor syntax, a cshtml.cs, okay, a file extension on top of a file extension that has C# code that handles page events. And I believe if you kind of dig down, you can see those. A lot of times they hide those associated files, whether it's like an event handler, which this seems to be, is a C# code that handles page events. Now, again, never claimed to be a know-it-all. Let's just glance at here's an MVC solution. So if I glance at this MVC solution and I look at my views, I'm noticing these CSHTMLs do not have that drop down associated with them. For whatever that's worth, this template does, but the MVC template does not. Supporting files have names that begin with an underscore, like underscore layout. So pretty standard layout page with this render body. So it's kind of like the shell of the page, right? The HTML, boilerplate with the head, the body, the header tag, nav bar, container, main tag. Got some script tags. Okay, the www root per normal is all the static files. It says I work for a recruiting company, the only programmer. So it's tough. I will follow along. Cool, man. All right, app settings.json. Put your connection strings in here. Program CS spins up the web server. Right, we got the builder, web application, builder.build, add Razor Pages. Pretty basic. Map your static assets, so that goes into www root. And Razor Pages have static assets. The following lines of code in this file create a web application builder with pre-configured defaults. Add Razor Pages to support dependency injection. We're just looking at these lines up here. This program CS, you spin up all these different kinds of templates and they all start to look pretty similar with these certain lines that are pretty much, this is almost line for line the same. You're always going to get little nuances that are different. And so on here, they go through each method call here, configures endpoint routing for Razor Pages. Now endpoint routing, So if you go to /privacy, this app page direction, directive says, I believe this app page line 1 is going to say, hey, take the name of this file, and if you navigate to /privacy, you land on that page, capital P or not. Okay, so on to the next step, which is to add a model, right? So this is a movies, so we're going to add a models folder, scaffold the movie model. So scaffolding is the code generation, so let's close, close, close. And we're going to add a folder for our models. Right click, add folder, models. And so the way these work is these kind of wire up to database tables. And we're going to add a class. This is code first entity framework. This is going to be movie. And here we can just copy these auto-implemented properties and paste. Now this is our data annotation, so it automatically added that using statement. So our movie is going to have an ID, a title, a release date, a genre, nullable genre, and a price. Now this is kind of cool. These data annotations, right? So this is kind of helping, or a lot of times it's like data validation, but in this case, this data type of data type.date says a data type attribute specifies the data of release date. With this attribute, the user isn't required to enter time information. So even though the data type is date time, you don't have to enter that time field, which is nice because a lot of my students, when they have a date time, it'll the view that it creates will be a calendar, and you got to put in not only the date, but you have to annoyingly type in the time as well. So that's a nice little attribute that I'll just share in my Discord chat for my students here. Just a nice little tidbit. Okay, and then as we know, this genre says, hey, this can be nullable. And if you take off that question mark, these strings, they say, hey, you get the green squiggly, which is not, obviously the red squiggly, which will not compile. This is just a warning. It says a non-nullable genre must contain a non-null value when exiting the constructor. So I think another way to do this is say string.empty, like a default action. You could say, hey, the default genre is action, or you could say string.empty. There's a bunch of ways to get rid of that green squiggly. If you want to set a default, you can do that, but otherwise you just say, hey, it's nullable. And it says data annotations are covered later in this tutorial. Scaffold the movie model. Okay. Right click pages, add new folder. So underneath pages, add folder, type in movies. Then we're going to add scaffolded item. So right click movies, add scaffolded item. Entity framework CRUD. So we're going to click on Razor Pages. Razor Pages using entity framework CRUD. As a teacher, you do CRUD like all day and night. These tutorials, you do CRUD all day and night, just over and over and over. Complete the add Razor Pages using entity framework dialog. Add. And we're going to say movie. We're going to click the plus item here. Razor Pages movie context. Click add. SQL Server. Check, check. Click on add. My class is in person. I have both. I've been teaching at Rankin Technical College in St. Louis since 2006, and it's always been in person up until COVID. Then we started doing some online classes, but mostly in person. And then the next is edit mostly a modal master detail method? You might even be ahead of me here. A modal master detail method. I got to take it. I think the next step for me is to kind of look at all the scaffolded code. So if I look at edit, I do see the modal only or model only. No, that's not what you're talking about. Tell me what you're talking about, Mike. You said is edit mostly a modal master detail method. No problem. Okay, yeah, I'll continue on. I think you might be a couple steps ahead of me. The app settings JSON is updated with a connection string used to connect to a local database. Now, so let's open the app settings, and here I'm using the instance of SQL Server called localDB, right? And my database name is right here. I always rename this database to be something something that makes a little more sense to me. So I'll get rid of all this randomness. Because Razor Pages Movie DB, Razor Pages Movie Database, right? So that makes more sense to me. Now here, Razor Pages Movie Context, this connection string is used in the program CS right here. So this name has to match in program CS, has to match this name in app settings. So as long as that matches, everything else should be good. Okay, the scaffold creates the following files: create, delete, details, edit, and index. So here's index, delete, details, edit. Kind of already looked at that. And create. It does create a whole lot of code for you. Create the initial database schema using migration feature. So we're going to go, add migration, initial create. So in package manager console, we're going to go tools, package manager console, add migration, initial, what do they call it? Initial create. And it is worth noting I did not have to install any dependencies. Entity Framework Core SQL Server and Entity Framework Core Tools, these two packages, a lot of times I have to manually install those, but they're already here for me. So let's type in the next step, which is update database. Cool. So now the database should be created. So if I go to expand my databases, and what did we call this guy? Razor Pages Movie. And it's going to have one table in it called Movie. Right, now I didn't seed any data, so this should be empty. But if I use this create page, it'll put a movie into our database. Now this context file, where's the context file? Inside of data. So here's data, here's my context file. Right, so here's the table called movie, so this context wires into our database, creates one table called the movie table. Run it and go to /movies. Now /movies takes us here. Now again, just to kind of see pages, /movies loads the index by default. So this is the page that we're on. And here's a tag helper for the anchor tag, ASP-page. See, this is just different enough from MVC. ASP page /create. So I wonder if I may, so if I hover, you can see /movie/create, right? So it's taking me /create here, so I can click the link and that's where it takes me. That's nice, we get the date only. The Matrix was my favorite movie as a kid, released in 1999. We're just going to say April of 1999. See if I can leave a blank price. Nope. It says the price field is required. Even though I didn't mark price as required, maybe because it's not nullable. But again, I can go into the initial create and see that it's not nullable. So price is not nullable, but genre is nullable. So let's just give it a price. Let's leave the genre off, and there you go. So it's all based on the model. Edit, action, details, back to list, delete. Certainly delete works. I'm just going to keep that movie in there. Create a movie, examine the context registered with dependency injection. Okay, so kind of close. Wants us to look at program CS, and what it's pointing out here is that this is the context file that's using dependency injection. Dependency injection is pretty awesome because it's going to take our context class, right? It'll instantiate this class for us and pass it into, in an MVC world, you could pass it into a controller. In this case, we're probably just injecting it right into the view. So if I go into create and I go up to the top, where is this getting injected into? So here's create. let's look at the event handlers. There we go. So here we're injecting it into the event handlers. See, this is different enough. I'm glad I'm doing this. So there's my context file. So this line 15, you know, this is saying, hey, this object of the movie context, this object can be passed in. Like, we don't have to instantiate a new movie context. We could just pass the object in, and dependency injection will create the instance of this class and pass it in when it's needed, right? So here's the constructor for that, and here is entity framework adding the movie to the context. In other words, saving it to our database. So this is the line that adds the movie and then basically saves it in the database. So I'm kind of here where it's like, hey, examine the scaffolded razor pages. And that's basically what I've been doing. On the index CSHTML, it's kind of the same thing. We read all the movies stored in this movie property. So here's this movie property. And then it will be used here. Now this is create, so let's go back to index. Index here. This is actually a movies plural, but here there's our for each. I'm like, where's our loop? We're going to loop all over all of our movies. Again, I don't like that it's singular, but no big deal. And it does point out that it's asynchronous, async await. Everything's async await. So we get that efficiency there. Chatting with an alumni real quick who's going to attend my alumni advisory board meeting. 3/24 at 5 p.m. I sent an email last week, but here's the Teams link. Let me get them. Let me get this alumni squared away. Cool. So it was good to stay in touch with alumni. Okay, back to the tutorial. When a GET request is made for the page, the get async method returns a list. Yep. When the return type is iActionResult, a return statement must be provided. So example on the create, let's go to create. So here is a action result, and we return to page index. Return to page is a return to page result. So yeah, there's a whole hierarchy here of valid return data types. But if you implement iActionResult in a task, that's when I say task, to me that says asynchronous. And then these are all different ways to return to the views, or in this case, the Razor pages. Oh, we got Develo. Hey, I'm thinking about learning a language and possibly having a job, and I'm wondering if C# is the ideal language. Where do you live? There are more popular languages than C#, but you know, it's kind of hard to understand all the different job markets. What I will say is St. Louis has a very strong C# job market. So I could tell you specifically where I live. There's a good number of C# jobs. Oh, that's cool. Hello from St. Louis, watching all the way from South Africa. Very cool, man. Thanks for chiming in. So yeah, if wondering if C# is the ideal language, it just depends on your local job market. And what I can tell you about the St. Louis job market is it's been very strong C# for a long time. The thing about the Midwest, and it's like this with you know, multiple areas, is that really popular languages are going to start on the coast and then they work their way slowly to the Midwest. It's kind of like fashion, you know, the high fashion East and West Coast. They're going to get the trends way before us. Yeah, so living in Pennsylvania now, and it's like I'd have to understand the Pennsylvania job market a little, and you know what city in Pennsylvania. So maybe is the answer. You know, there's really neat research tools, and so you know you could use some research tools like built into ChatGPT. There's a deep research mode. And you could say, hey, I live in this city in Pennsylvania, and I want to understand the development market and the number of jobs, and help me understand the job market. And I find these deep research tools can do a ton of good research for you in a very short amount of time. Let me show. I actually my LLM of choice is Google's Gemini. I do pay for this because they were the first one to have this deep research mode, and it's only $20 a month, and Google was the first one. You know, so I'd like to understand the developer job market in and so it'll go out and it'll research 100+ websites for you. And it's like, hey, it's going to find the number of open jobs, the average salary, in-demand programming languages. You click Start Research, and it takes a little bit of time, but we'll come back to this and see what it says. Yeah, remote work too. Remote work is great. You know, it's a little bit. You know, my opinion on remote work is, you know, when you're first starting your career, I prefer in-person mentorship. But yeah, if you can work remote, by all means. Okay. Okay, now it talks a little bit about the page directive. The at page razor directive makes the file an MVC action. Which means that it can handle requests. At page must be the first directive on a page. Page and model are examples of transitioning into razor specific markup. The model specifies it's the strict data type for the razor page. The model makes the kind of back off here. Still doing my research. Okay. So I'm very specifically reading this right now. The model directive specifies the type of the model passed to the razor page. In the preceding example, the app model makes the page model, which I don't see anything about page model, derived class available to the razor page. The model used in display name for and display name for HTML helpers on the page. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of inspect this line. This is, let's look at where this is at. So this is on the index right here. So the model for this is not a movie, right? I guess that's the point that it's making here. Like you would expect essentially, since this is the list, you would actually expect a list of movie here. But it's not. It's an index model, which you can hold down Control and click this, and you can see index model inherits page model. So that's what it's talking about right there. The index model inherits page model, which is what this is saying. The model makes the page model derived class available to the razor page. But it does say movies. So it at least but again, I would expect it, in an MVC app, the model would be a list of movies. So again, a little bit different with what I'm familiar with here. So that's cool to kind of see the differences. Okay, the layout page, we already kind of looked at the layout page. View data and layout. Consider the following markup in the index CSHTML. So this is obviously the title, so I would say list of my movies. Obviously that'll go up in the tab for the title. And that will ultimately go right here, the view data title, and then this is Razor Pages Movie. So it should append what I typed there with Razor Pages Movie. Which of course, so here's a list of my movies, hyphen Razor Pages Movie. I would say learning Razor Pages. Save that. See if it does a hot reload, and it does. Learning Razor Pages. find the following anchor element in the underscore layout. So let's go back here. It has this here, Razor Pages movie. So it just, here's Razor Pages movie. So this anchor tag is giving us that link right there. I'll say my movie list. Right here. And the page, instead of going to /index, /movies index. There we go. So now that takes us there. Approximately 10,000 open software developer positions across Pennsylvania. Healthy and competitive landscape. Salary information, most in demand. It does list C#. JavaScript mean stack. So, you know, again, in St. Louis, we're learning JavaScript MERN, React instead of Angular, and we're learning C#. It also mentions Java, Python, very much in demand, Swift, iOS, Python, Java, C++. You know, there's no single answer there as far as the best job for you, but there are some good options for you. Supply demand is hard to measure sometimes because just because you pick the most in demand, there could also be a high supply. Okay, so it does set, as I continue through, it does set the layout. Let's see, view start. It sets our layout right here. And it automatically appends the file extension here. So there's a little string concatenation going on automatically here. I actually had a student point that out to me a month ago. It's like, well, why don't you have to type the full CSHTML here? And it's like, well, I could assume so, but yeah, that's safe assumption is that it puts it on there for you, and that would actually be true. Okay. So create. So again, create CSHTML and create CSHTML.cs. And here, binding to a movie. We already looked at all this. If the model state is not valid, this is our validation, right? So remember, I tried to create a movie without a price and the data was not valid. So this returned us to that page and actually gave us a validation summary. This validation summary lit up with red errors. And we go to here. Down here, this create is going to bring in our validation scripts partial. Validation scripts partial is jQuery validation. And so if you don't want these scripts brought in on every page, this is how it's done, where you can bring in on the create here to bring in jQuery. So you're getting client-side validation. You actually don't have to wait for a post. So if I go to create new, I hit create, and I start typing here, Notice I didn't have to post and that validation went away. That's because of jQuery validation. I can actually inspect here and see the jQuery validation is brought in on these pages. So that's cool. Again, that's validation summary and ASP validation 4. So you actually get the summary control and the individual messages. Okay. Now this form tag helper, the form tag helper automatically includes anti-forgery token. And to kind of anti-forgery token, when you click on that, prevents cross-site request forgery scripting attacks. One-click attack or session writing because the attack takes advantage of the previously authenticated session. Cross-site request forgery, XSRF, or CSRF. Okay. So it has some built-in protection from a cybersecurity standpoint, which is a great thing. All these tag helpers, ASP4, these are available because of view imports. There's these tag helpers right here. You will notice all of these blue, these are tag helpers. These attributes are not on standard HTML anchor tags. These are the tag helpers built into .NET. So there's a label tag helper, an input tag helper. If I go to these right here. What was I looking at? Create, maybe? Create. There we go. Label tag helpers, input tag helpers. So all these blue. My students will tell me if it doesn't light up blue, you know there's a problem. I say, yeah, that's kind of the first step sometimes. Getting those tag helpers to be recognized in Visual Studio. Okay. Kind of already looked at all the database stuff and kind of go back into here and view the designer around the SQL Server table that was created. So it gets us our SQL Server data types. Some are nullable, some are not. ID is a primary key, not nullable. Okay, now I'm going to actually put in some seed data into here. So inside of the data folder, no, inside of models. We'll go inside of models, close all tabs, clean this up. Inside of models, right click, add a class. Seed data. I've done this a few times. You're going to making this a public static class called seed data. And then we make a static method called initialize. Right, so I'll bring in this header here. Looks like this. One more curly. Okay, so we make a static class called cData. We make a method called initialize. It's a static method called initialize. Brings in an iServiceProvider interface argument called service provider. Okay, a using statement here. So using your movie context, we're going to basically get our movie context. So using the movie context, we get the required service for the movie context. Here's an if statement. If context is null, throw an exception, or the movie is null, throw an exception. If there are any movies, your database is fine, don't mess with it. Otherwise, we add some movies and save the changes. Okay, so here's a handful of movies. Okay, so this cData, okay, now you basically have to call this method in your program CS. So it's if there are any movies, you break out of it. Now we go into your program CS, add a using statement, adding the models, and then we make a after builder.build, we say, hey, create this temporary scope. Here's our cData initialize these services. So this will basically get our cData put into the database when the app is running. Now, I'm pretty sure we got to delete the one, get the database context instance from the dependency injection container, call the initialize method. The following exception occurs when update database has not been run. Cannot open database. Okay, test the app, delete all the records in the database. So so basically it says, hey, if you launch it, there's already a movie in there, so you're not going to see these new movies. Let this boot up. Yeah, so you already got the movie in there, so let's close that down. Let's go into our, we can delete it manually, or let's just test the delete operation, right? We didn't do that yet. Go here, delete, delete. Okay, so now there's no movies. Close it down, boot it up. And there's our new movies that have been seeded. So yeah, we create this thing called a scope, and it's just a temporary, in RAM temporarily, right? So basically, run this just temporarily method, the cData initialize, and then you go in scope, out of scope is how I look at this. So you're not wasting memory. Next up, update the generated pages. Okay. So some silly small stuff here, but if I go into pages, index, it's always like, hey, release date should be 2 words. So right now, release date is not 2 words. So a couple ways to fix that. Now they have it fix it through the model. So let's go here. Let's open up the movie model. And we add this release date display data annotation. And we're going to tell this price. This will tell our SQL Server essentially to be currency. All right, so if you're working with money, decimal 18.2 is definitely something I've seen a bunch. Says data annotations is covered in the next tutorial. So more on these on another tutorial. Let's save. Browse to the movies and hover over an edit link to see the target URL. So let's boot that up. See if release date is 2 words. That it is. If I hover edit, you can see a little query string where the ID is 2. So localhost movies edit query string ID of 2. And oops, did not mean to open up Mongo there. Back in the index, you could see the edit page with a route ID of item ID. So this is the ID of movie number 2, so on and so forth. Right, and you can see the link that it generates. If I inspect, edit ID of 5, details ID of 5, delete ID of 5. Yeah, this is cool. Add a route template. Update the edit delete to use the ID int route template. Change the page directive for each of these page. Oh, this is cool. This is how you do this outside of MVC. Okay. So this will update these links, this route template. So instead of using a query string, it's actually part of the route. To use the ID int route template, change the page directive for each of these pages from the page to the page ID int. So this is on edit, details, and delete. So again, this is a little different. So here, edit, details, and delete. A request to the page with a route template that does not include an integer returns a 404. Test the behavior, set the page directive in the details, already did that, set a breakpoint on the details, get async. So we're going to go details, and here's my get async, so that ID should be passed in. Now here, if I start with debugging, it has me manually type it in without an int. So the ID should be null and it should return not found. So /movies/details, enter, hits the breakpoint, ID is null, returns not found, 404 not found, correct. Now that's cool and whatnot, but let's see here, now the ID is passed in, and now it's part of the route. Snazzy. Okay, it's got some built-in concurrency exception handling. We can edit a file. This tutorial is a little longer than I anticipated, but we're getting through it. Yeah, so it says, I think Python is ideal, but most companies require a college degree. I mean, we're an associate's degree, and I can tell you as long as I've been teaching, you're right. I mean, the higher up the pecking order, if you have a bachelor's, the better. If you've got a master's, that's better. But, you know, what we do to, you know, distinguish ourselves is projects, you know. Our students should have a portfolio by the time they graduate of real-world software, real-world websites, you know, that they build as part of the curriculum here. And so, you know, if you view the college degree as your competition, what you have to do to separate yourself is really essentially grind, put in the work, build something for someone else is what it boils down to. Build something for someone else that's in production and in use, and that's how you're going to make yourself look better than someone who just went through some college courses. Okay. So here it's just having us look at the concurrency code. We got a try catch in here. So on post async, this is on the edit. On post async, here's our try catch. So here we catch an exception, and if someone else maybe deleted the movie, you know, you can't edit a movie that someone else deleted. So here, you know, you're going to get like a 404 error, essentially. And that would lead to that. Now I could go in there and demonstrate that, but I'm going to get through this. I got about 30 more minutes. Posting and binding review. So this is your get. Find the movie, set the bind property, set the movie here. So once you set the movie here, then the view can actually use that to put all the movie properties into the text boxes. And then when you post, that same movie is bound here. So this bind property movie is used on the getting the movie and when you're updating the movie. So like the read and the update operation. Okay, next up we add search. Yeah, Mike earlier said that he is a recruiter, right? Isn't that what he said? So he offers some insight. Have a project in use that showcases your skills. Then they can ask you questions about your project. Yeah, I agree completely. Okay, so let's close all this. Close all tabs. And we are back working in the index. Okay, and we're adding search. Okay, so down in the index CSHTML/CS, we got our list of movies. And bring in these pieces here and read through their. The search string contains the text that the user types in the search box, has a bind property attribute. Bind property binds form values and query strings with the same name as the property. So we're going to be naming a text box search string in the view. This property, bind property, supports get to true is required for binding on get requests. Genres contains a list of genres. Genres allows the users to select the users from the list. The select list requires the using rendering. So there's a using statement in here. Movie genre contains a specific genre that the user selects, for example, Western. Genres and movie genres are used later in this tutorial. So genres and movie genres used later. Okay, on get async. Updating this method to the following little link. So select all the movies from the movie context. So this is selecting all the movies, and then if there's a search string, then you filter by the title. So if there's a search string in the, I think this will end up being in the, it'll be a query string parameter. Then you do a filter, and then you set your list. So this is all the movies, and then this filters them if it exists, and then that actually runs the query. Okay, so if I run this now, and I just manually type in a query string, so we'll go here. We could filter by ghost like that. Now we just got to get the interface to have a form. And so we're going to go to the index, CSHTML, create new. Here's a little form underneath this with a text box. The ASP4 search string, again that tag helper, and a button. I want to see if a bootstrap is in here. So if these classes make a little bootstrap button. If not, I won't do anything. Yeah, we got bootstrap. Ghost, filter, and it is doing a post, which is fine. Okay. Yeah, it's really interesting. In chat, we're talking about actually authentication and authorization, like providing authorization to the different areas of the site. And yeah, there's built-in identity and there's built-in tools for doing this. This is something that we do in my MVC class. We're like on chapter 12 or something today, and in chapter 16, how to authenticate and authorize users. So yeah, we have roles, these are groups if you will, and then you can lock down different areas of the site. And definitely can do that in ASP.NET. Okay. Now searching by genre. Now going back here, okay, so here we're selecting all of our genres from our context. So all the movies, order by their genre. Okay, so here's that. Here's all the movies. Here's the genre query. And very similar to how we filtered by the search string, if there's a movie genre, then we're going to filter our movies by the movie genre. This will make a select list, right? That select list is going to be a drop-down list in our view. Genre query distinct, so we're not repeating our genres. Right, so this is going to be used to populate a drop-down of genres. So doing a couple different things there. And in our view, underneath our paragraph tag, here's all of our modeled genres. So movie genre there, ASP4 movie genre there, so those match. Now if I boot it up, okay, so there we go. Filter by comedy, romantic comedy, western, all. Nice. Okay, and the last couple things here in this tutorial, part 7, add a new field. So we're going to add a rating to our movies. So we're going to go back into our model movies, rating. And then in our index, display the movie rating, the display name for, and scroll down. Update the following pages with a rating field. So create. So let's go to create, and at the bottom here, add the rating, delete. Okay, so that was create. Delete's going to be a couple spots. Data list, data term, data definition. So each one of these has two. So we got two on the delete. We got the rating and the rating. So that's on the delete. Details. That should display the movie rating. And edit. The app won't work until the database is updated to include the new field. Running the app without an update throws SQL exception. Okay, so basically we reseed the data. So I'm going to go back and do my seed data and now include a rating and I can update or add migration update. Should see that I have a rating column now. Update database. And let me view the data. In fact, I can just delete the database and recreate it again with update database. And now Let me run. Build solution. Build, rebuild. Okay. Cool. And there's our rating. It's there on an edit. It's there on the details. Oop, little something there to clean up on details. It's there on a delete. Okay, last but not least, adding validation rules. And this is something that my class is working on now. Title. So let's close all tabs. Movie. Okay, title. Price. Price has a range, release date. Genre. Rating. Okay, all this normal stuff when it comes to data validation. Regular expression. The first character being uppercase letter. Create new. There we go, 3 and 60. Release date. Genre. Must be a number. So we got some regular expressions there. Cool. Notice how the form automatically renders a validation error message. The errors are enforced both client using JavaScript and jQuery and server side. A significant benefit is that no code changes were necessary in the create or edit pages. Once data annotations were applied to the model, the validation UI was enabled. You're right. I mean, I changed annotations to the model and everything else was pretty much automatic. Okay, one more change to the date. So this was data type. It was just a data type. Now it's a certain format, and apply format in edit mode. The apply in edit mode setting specifies that the formatting will be applied when the value is displaying for editing. That behavior may not be wanted for some fields. For example, currency, this currency symbol is not usually wanted in the edit UI. The display format attribute can be used by itself, but it's generally good to use with the data type. Okay, so then let's just test this real quick before they change it back. Yeah, that's not really working for me. That's alright, they didn't stick with it anyways. Oh. Oh, that's why. There we go. Okay, that pretty well ends that one. I did kind of skip over some changes to the database, limiting the characters to 60. But that finishes that tutorial. Very cool. All right, learned a few things today. If you followed along, I appreciate it. Have a good rest of your day, everybody. Take care.